Please welcome the chairman of the Global Human Rights Subcommittee, Congressman Chris Smith.
You know, it was a joy to watch Mike smiling so broadly as he watched his daughter sing those two beautiful anthems. Well done. What a proud father. And what an amazing man. The Matatoses have been the coin of the realm. They've been a force. I've been in Congress 43 years. My name is Chris Smith, and I can't tell you how the influence, the good positive influence they have had on all matters relating to grief and as well as other human rights issues. So thank you, Mike, so very, very much. And, you know, we meet here tonight as our great friend and ally Israel, with significant assistance from the United States, responds to the cowardly Hamas invasion that includes, sadly, butchering innocent civilians, rape, hostage-taking, the beheading of babies, and daily indiscriminate missile attacks that are reminiscent of Nazi buzz bombs and the V-2 rockets. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has said in the past that he would never allow a second Holocaust, nor should we. Anti-Semitism is at the root of Hamas's violence against Israel and every Jewish man, woman, and child. Anti-Semitism, which is absolute hatred of Israel and the Jews, is the reason for this genocide. Over the course of a lifetime of noble and distinguished service, no one has done more to combat anti-Semitism than Rabbi Andy Baker. As Director of International Jewish Affairs at the American Jewish Committee, AJC, Rabbi Baker has not only been a powerful voice, but an extraordinarily wise leader and strategist. In a word, he is brilliant. Rabbi Baker has testified several times before the House Foreign Affairs Committee that I chair and the Helsinki Commission. He's also testified all over Europe. He's testified on the Senate side, and he has spoken with so many people who make policy and has had a profound impact. In May of 2022, for example, he testified at one of my hearings and said there can be little doubt that biased, one-sided, and unrelenting hostile attacks on Israel have contributed to a climate in which the Jewish state is demonized and presented to the world as a pariah among nations. At that hearing, and with a strong and critically important push from Rabbi Baker, we first proposed that the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe host major conferences on exposing and ending anti-Semitic hate. Rabbi Baker fought tirelessly to put combating anti-Semitism onto the agenda of the 57-member OSCE, and there was pushback from several of the country delegations. I know I was there, and I watched as he did such magnificent work. When the historic high-level OSCE 2004 Berlin Anti-Semitism Conference occurred, we were faced with the action document, the follow-through, what was to be done with everything that had been talked about for those several days. Well, we hit an impasse, and guess who broke the impasse? He skillfully wordsmithed the document. I was there, watched him. We got disparate elements together and made sure that we had an actionable plan that would truly make a difference. It including striving to ensure that every country's legal system fosters a safe environment free from anti-Semitic harassment, violence, or discrimination. It ensured that the promotion of Holocaust education occur. We had found, and he had found so clearly, there's so many schools, particularly in Europe, never even mentioned the Holocaust. And also the collection of reliable, actionable information and statistics about anti-Semitism. You can't combat a human rights abuse if you don't chronicle it and lay bare what is actually happening. And again, Andy played the key role in making sure that all happened. In January of 2009, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe appointed Rabbi Baker to be their top diplomat combating anti-Semitism. As he traveled and met with political and religious leaders throughout Europe, the United States, and the Middle East, Rabbi Baker has been tremendously tenacious and bold, but always diplomatic, always kind, always diplomatic. Behind his disarming affability and goodness is a man with an iron will. Rabbi Baker has been recognized for his work fighting anti-Semitism by many, many countries, including the Czech Republic, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, just to name a few. Well, tonight he is the recipient of the Metropolitan Chrysostomos Award, and no one has deserved it more than he. He is courageous and just an amazing, amazing leader, and I can't think of anyone who more deserves it. And I want to thank him for his leadership. Rabbi Baker.
Well, Chris, I've often said you've been in Congress so long that you started when you were a teenager, I think, on Capitol Hill. But with all of these efforts going back decades, you were there from the beginning and you are there now. So I thank you as well, and I'm honored that you presented this award to me. On the morning of October 7th, I was in Krakow, Poland, and I was reading those first news alerts of Hamas attacks taking place in Israel along the Gaza border as they came in on my phone. And it soon became clear in the numbers of those killed and the ways they had been murdered that this was the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. On the previous day, Adina and I visited Auschwitz. The Auschwitz State Museum now receives 2.3 million visitors annually. Some years ago, when I was a member of the Museum Council, that number reached 1 million, and already that made it the most visited place in Poland. It is, after all, one of the very few sites that shows how the Nazis' genocidal plans were implemented. Rarely had the world encountered, and certainly not in the 20th century, such evil. And in the face of such evil, it should have been easy to say no. But this was not the case. Far too many individuals, governments, chose to collaborate with their German occupiers, or simply look the other way. That is why the Greek example that we celebrate this evening stands apart. That is also why the moral clarity, the simple humanity of Metropolitan Chrysostomos were a beacon of light in the darkest of times. 20 years ago, when that first OSCE conference on countering anti-Semitism took place, we had to convince our European friends that this ancient hatred had not totally receded from history. The virus was still with us, and it could still do serious harm. Jewish communities faced verbal and physical harassment and attacks, and governments were not responding. We saw a new form of anti-Semitism. Jews were targeted by those angry with the state of Israel, and Israel itself was demonized. We have made considerable progress since then in getting governments, both in Europe and here in the United States, to respond. We now have a clear and comprehensive definition of anti-Semitism, describing both old and new forms, adopted now by dozens of governments. We have national action plans and strategies, and increased funding for security. In a matter of weeks, we are likely to see a United Nations action plan, one that will propose measures to address that organization's own shortcomings. Much of this success is due to our collective political and diplomatic efforts. But we have been aided by the sad reality that anti-Semitic incidents, some of them lethal, have in fact increased dramatically. And yet, nothing prepared us for those horrific attacks on October 7th, for the mass torture and murder of 1,400 Jews in a single day. Holocaust educators tell us that the Nazi crimes did not start with gas chambers. Instead, they began with words and incremental steps, and therefore, we must be vigilant. Although no one paid them much attention, the charter of Hamas, and for that matter, the textbooks used in Gaza classrooms, in UN schools funded by the European Union, call for the murder of Jews. Our carefully drafted definition is not needed to recognize this genocidal anti-Semitism. Today, it should not be difficult to say no and to condemn these terrorist acts, with space still left, if you want, to criticize an Israeli government and voice support for Palestinian rights. It requires no special courage. Many did so, and for this we are grateful. But there were also many people, including here in America, who celebrated these killings, or who insisted that it was Israel to blame. That moral clarity, that simple humanity that we celebrate tonight are again in short supply. Surely difficult times are before us, but America's unswavering support in this crisis, reflected in the words of our president and the bipartisan voices in Congress, and demonstrated by the embrace of our Greek-American friends and allies, and those of other religious and ethnic communities, they all give us hope. And so it is what allows us to say, it's what allows me to say and despite the grief we feel, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Praised are you, O God, who has kept us in life, who has sustained us, and who has brought us to be together this evening. Amen, and thank you.